This week's episode of I Was a Teenage Film Snob is not brought to you by producers or sponsors or any of those money people. It's fully independent, baby. Welcome to I Was a Teenage Film Snob. I'm James Chalmers, your friendly neighborhood film snob. It is a solo show this week, which means, of course, I have a wonderful guest from the industry. We're trying to get as many people on the show as possible. And today's guest might be my most watched performer of the year. I have not seen more films with a person than this actor today. But today's guest isn't just an actor. He's a writer, a producer, a director. And honestly, maybe the best representation of the beating heart of independent film. He's such a talented guy. I really love him. We've been having a nice chat already. And I can't wait for you all to meet him. You've heard his name on my profile many times already. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Timothy J Cox. Hey, Tim, how you going?
Hello, James. Thank you for having me. This is such an honor.
It's lovely to have you. You and I have been best buds on online basis. We've been chatting just about every day, so it's nice to.
You have been like my champion. Yeah, and which I mean and I love it. You get like that 90 seconds, like that's perfect. You really do you get it in that 90 seconds. It's perfect. I always wonder though, do you have to do multiple takes or do you get it in the first, or is it like stream of consciousness one take? Because if you do, that's impressive. That's wonderful.
It's a really good question. I don't think anyone's asked before. Most of the time, it is a single take. Sometimes I won't quite get it. So, for example, with your films, I want to make sure I'm crediting the right people. So, what I will obviously, I'm less familiar with independent cinema. I'm still getting my head around it, and I haven't. You actually welcomed me back into the world of short film. I haven't watched short films in a long time. So, between you and Harry and a few other people, it's been lovely to go back to that. So, for your films, I will have a Word document up behind me with the correct credits just to make sure I get everyone's name right. So sometimes I'll have to do a second take, but most times it is a first take. Every now and then, I'm sure my neighbors can hear me. I curse myself out because I flub a line or something like that. But I try to do everything stream of conscious. So whether it's your films or, the latest thing in the cinema, even the podcast, I just talked about this on the episode that dropped this morning, actually. Very little preparation goes into it. And it's not because I'm lazy or negligent, but once I have a script, you can tell. And I feel like it takes away the authenticity. And the whole point of this show, and even the reviews, is to just have a chat. You wouldn't script a conversation. So why would I kind of script those? And you can tell when people are scripted, even the pros, like when it comes to reviews and stuff, you can tell, like, I need to hit these points. So I'm like, I don't have an agenda. Like, that's a weird thing to say as a guy talking about movies on the internet, but there is no agenda. I just want to like celebrate them all. So,
And it's great. They're fun to watch. I mean, all of the reviews and everything, and little tidbits. And of course, you got to interview Gillian Bell recently, which is wonderful, and Harry
you
Waldman and a lot of other wonderful people. So
you don't know this, but you're actually instrumental in my interview with Gillian Bell. I was going to shout it up. I was like, oh, wait, and I'll tell you in person. You and I were meant to have a podcast the morning that I interviewed her, and you had a meeting come up and you had to reschedule. And I remember being like, oh
mhm.
man, I was looking forward to that, but that's okay. And then Jillian and I connected, and the only day and time she was available was the slot that you had previously booked, and then it moved. I was like, oh my God, if Tim hadn't rescheduled, I wouldn't have been able to speak to Jillian. So in many ways, you're a big
You're
part
welcome, Jillian. You're welcome, Jillian.
of it. Yeah,
Jillian, please call me, please.
that was insane. I'm still kind of pinching myself over that one. That was crazy, but such a
Yeah, it was wonderful. My wife and I watched the movie because we'll go on television and we'll find a movie on Prime, and we saw I'm so sorry, the movie that she did where she was in a marathon. I forget. I'm
oh
gonna
no, I'm Nate
but
testing me as well. I don't prepare, Tim, so I don't have my IMDb with me.
Oh,
Uh,
now, well, we got the phone here. I'm gonna look up real quick because Jillian, I want to get this right. But we we saw this. Let me bear with me just a moment. Uh, Brittany runs a marathon. If you
oh, there you
haven't
go.
seen it, James,
I haven't,
Brittany
no.
runs a marathon. It came out just a couple of years ago, but my wife Jamie and I, we were scrolling through when we saw something on Prime, and I thought, "Oh, Gillian Bell, we really like her," and we thought that it was gonna be a comedy. It is very funny, but it is also extraordinarily, moving,
Oh, great.
and if you I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it, and, Gillian, you were fantastic in that. So, as soon as I saw that you were interviewing her, that was the first movie I thought of her, so
Yeah, lovely. You are the first person I'm interviewing following that. The way the episodes drop, it won't quite work that way, but in terms of people I've spoken to, you will be the next person I interview following her. So
sure.
um, well, yeah. So as I said, we've been getting to know each other. I was talking to you before we started recording. For those listening, if you've ever been to my Instagram page, I have an email address up there. It's only been made kind of public up there, but it has been accessible for about 3 years. Tim, you're the first person to use it, so thank you for reaching out. Most people just jump into my DMs. They're like, "Hey, watch this movie." I'm like, "All right." A lot of the times, it is very much like, "Hey, do this." I'm like, "Okay, no worries." Like, I will. But you are very cordial. There's all your credits on there. There's always screen grabs and posters and all sorts of stuff. Um,
Yeah, I try to be formal, like real, like an official letter, and with all of the materials, like trailer and
mm.
poster and screenshots and all of that.
I remember I woke up because obviously we're on different time schedules. It's about almost 6:30 p.m. your time. It's 8:30 in the morning here for
Mhm.
me. I remember waking up to I think it was like four emails from you, and I'd be highly intimidated. I was like, "This is very professional." I was like, "Well, I don't know if I'm cut out for this. This guy might not like. Does he know that how rinky dink I am? Let's have a look." And then obviously you're an absolute sweetheart, and I felt bad because you'd sent me so many, and you have continued to send me so many. I think we're about 10 or 12 or something. You sent me so many, and I'm constantly trying to play catch up, and I don't want to like leave it too long without getting
Oh,
them reviewed and stuff. But
I'm always, when from the, I guess, for the last 15 years of like sending films out to critics, with the permission of prior of directors and producers and things like that, I always assume that critics have a huge backlog. I mean, most of the time, if I contact a critic and they say, "Hey, it's going to take a while for me to get to this," it's like I always assume it's going to take you a while. I'm thankful that you're even responding to my
mm,
email, and that you're even agreeing to watch the films. I mean, I'm always very, very appreciative of anyone who because when we were saying before, when you make a film, whether it's a short film and you're not a movie star or a name, it's it's harder for you to get the word out there
mm,
because if a lot of people have these kinds of sites and they want to, you know, uh, review the big movies and see if you can nab, you know, movie stars for guests, and I respect that. Um, but it is nice when films by the indie artists are really embraced, and you're seeing a lot of that now. And
mm,
for me, it's interesting. A lot of people who used Letterboxd and Instagram and things like that, reviewing movies of all over the world.
mm.
It's really been nice to reach out and meet. James, like you, James, and your colleagues. So I'm appreciative of all of you for even taking the time to watch these films.
Oh, it's not a problem at all. As I said to you at one point, you're like, "Thank you for watching them all." I was like, no, I love movies. Like, if you put a movie in front of me, like I'm not the snob that I once was. So I will watch anything. Like I just love consuming, rewatching stuff, watching new things. And I've been that guy who has sent emails and not heard a response. So I will always actively. I won't always get to them straight away, especially if there's a few in a backlog. But I will always respond to every email. And it's interesting, like you talked about the 90-second reviews and how much you like them. That was never the goal for this. The Instagram was always just a promotionary tool for the podcast. And then
Mhm.
I found myself overseas last year, and I was not found myself. It was very much planned. We were gone for 6 months, and but I was in the UK, and suddenly my schedule was really difficult to kind of coordinate with my Australian guests because I have a rotating roster, or I did have a rotating roster of Australian guests, which is friends and family. And every couple of months, we'd change topics. So it was our top five favorite films, then top five 80s films, then 90s, and so on and so forth. And with that kind of stripped away from me, I didn't want to put the pressure on people to kind of stay up late or get up early. I had access to a few
Mhm.
international guests, but I was like, I need to find a way to keep putting out content. So I was like, well, I'll just you know, I'm working while I'm overseas, which is difficult as well. I'll just pop out like 30 to 90-second chats. I'll just watch something. I'll just kind of put my thoughts out there. And that way, at least, I'm still putting content out there. I'm still talking about movies, even if it's just myself. And people kind of loved them. I was like, oh, okay, nice. This is not what this is meant to be at all. So the plan was when I got back to Australia was to stop them and just focus on the podcast. But I kind of find myself still doing them. And then people have wanted me this year in particular, people have been like, can you review my movie? I was like, okay, sure. Like, I'd never considered myself a critic. I kind of have a thing. We were talking about it before. I have a thing about critics. I think how can you critique a carrot? So why would you critique a movie? But yeah, I just kept doing them. Yeah, that to me, like I don't know. I remember um, I want to say it was 2003 where I read the review that put me off critics. I would have been like 12 or 13 years old. And the last line of the review was like, if you like your movies fast and stupid, I guess this is for you. And I was like, I'm 12. Of course I like my movies fast and stupid. Like, you don't know the audience at all. Like, now I can't take you seriously. I, um, so now I just try and throw positivity out there. And,
Yeah,
encourage people
that's
to
nice.
watch them. You don't have to love it, but give it a go. Like I could get on a whole tangent. It's why I don't believe in like review bombing and stuff like that. I remember like when now I'm going on a tangent. When the second Aquaman film came out a few years ago, people were like, I'm not watching it because the universe is closing. I'm like, were you worried about the Shawshank Redemption universe when you watched that? Like, not a great example because that film didn't do so well, at the time. But
Well, and there was the latest Snow White film. I think there was
yeah,
some of that going on, unfortunately, which it doesn't. I thought that's what people were doing to spend their time. I'm like,
yeah.
read a book,
Or like
or
the whole Amber. Well, I mean, actually, Snow White's a great example because Rachel Ziegler obviously has kind of received quite a bit of backlash because she made some comments, which I don't think were unfair comments. Like she's talking about an old a 17th century fairy tale in the context of the modern day. Like, yeah, it's problematic. Like, so what? We're going to shut down the movie? And the thing I didn't understand about that is like, okay, you don't like her. For Amber Heard was the other one in Aquaman. They didn't like her, but like,
yeah,
what does that mean? The lighting guy gets punished? Like maybe the lighting guy for Aquaman 2 doesn't get hired on the next production because Aquaman 2 didn't do so well. Like people are
yeah.
so concerned about like I don't know, like that's why I try to like stay away from all that sort of stuff. Like I actually like I'll get annoyed if people talk too negatively about something. I'm like, sure. But instead of like bringing a problem, like do you have a solution? Because if you don't, like shut up. Like just
Have a solution. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very easy, in reviews, and I read them like from Roger Ebert or Pauline Kael, and they would say like, well, they didn't like this, but
Mm,
you never really state, well, why. I
mm,
mean, you can't just like because if I read a review and someone says, well, this didn't work for me and this is why, and I said, okay, and you stated, I respect your opinion because you actually stated specifically what didn't work for you, and like, it's the same thing on the positive end. So I think like there's ways to approach critical analysis. I mean, like of movies and theater and music, because you always want to, I don't know. You don't want to just slam somebody. Like
that,
John Simon used to, for the New Yorker, I think he wrote for. He would take delight in slamming. I think he said he has the distinction of giving both Laurence Olivier and Katharine Hepburn bad reviews, and it's like,
mm.
if that's your legacy, I guess. But I don't know. Like, kind of want to
That-
put a little more positivity out to the world.
yeah, and you make a really good point. There is a way to talk about these things critically. I just don't think critics remember that. I think especially in the
Yeah,
age of the internet, people are like it's either good or it's bad. It's like no, like there's shades. So like you very rarely like even if there is like a quote unquote poorly made movie, I'll be like yeah the CGI is not great, but I'm not going to a movie for the CGI. Like if the performances are interesting, if the story is good, if someone is captivating, if you can if you can show me something I've never seen before or something really messed up, like I'll forgive a lot. Just like make it different.
sure.
Um, yeah. What else was I going to say? Now that's all good. It's I will do this, Tim, when my brain will just forget, and then we'll just jump to the next one. But I'm really fascinated in you and your journey. Obviously, you've been in a ton of movies, a lot of wonderful shorts, and we'll talk about some of those. I Sundays with Dad really hit me in a very personal spot. I've actually just downsized my
Mhm.
own father into a unit. So it looks very similar to your dad's in that movie.
Mm.
So that as I watched that, I was in the process of kind of transitioning all of that. So that was very
Oh,
personal.
wow.
Doll It Up, which is one of the funniest things I've seen all year. I really enjoyed that one as well. But
Thank you.
where does it start for you? Did you know you wanted to be a performer as a kid? Is something you kind of fell into later? Has it always been a lifelong love of movies? How does that story begin for you?
Uh, I always loved the movies. Like, I have a very clear memory. I think I might have been like 3 or 4 being at a drive-in movie in
Mm,
1980 with my parents and my youngest brother, seeing Superman 2 for the first time,
nice.
being terrified of Terrence Stamp. But I always loved the movies, but I never thought about being an actor until it was completely by accident. I was in the 8th grade, and it was kind of a class clown, and I remember being in, a class, and the announcement came over the, you know, loudspeaker. They were having auditions for the school play during the day, and a friend of mine, Ryan Glover, sitting across from me, said, "Tim, you should audition. You're crazy enough." And I thought about it, and math class was coming up, and the auditions were during math class, and I would have done anything to get out of math class. And I went, auditioned, and it was a musical version of the old O. Henry story, The Gift of the Magi, and I ended up getting cast as the male lead.
Wow.
And you know, the only thing, there are a couple, the two things, the two big things that I remember was the first time I went out in front of an audience and I heard that laughter. That was like,
Mm,
it was like, because prior to that, I had aspirations like a lot of kids of being an athlete. I wanted to be like Larry Bird or Joe Montana, and I just wasn't a very good athlete. And so I was kind of floundering, I guess you could say. But when I heard that laughter, I
mm,
thought, oh, I'm onto something. And right around during that same performance, the principal of the school, Sister Phyllis, she came backstage before the last show, and she pulled me aside and she said, "You're good." She said, "But don't act, react." And for 20 odd years, I didn't know what she meant. Like,
mm,
I thought, I didn't like, but yeah, it kinda hit me like, "Oh, that's why I gravitate to people like Spencer Tracy and Gene Hackman and Albert Finney and Jack Lemmon." It's like you never these are great actors, you never see them act. They are who they are, the character.
mhm,
I did theater in high school and did in college, and it was probably when I was a senior in high school, I saw 2 performances that cemented it that, okay, I'm an actor. One was Donald Sutherland in Ordinary People,
mhm.
but the big one was Jack Lemmon in Days of Wine and Roses. I mean, that was like the, okay, I'm an actor.
Mm,
I don't this is what I am meant to do. And when I was in college, I did, Shakespeare and the classics. Never thought about acting in the movies. I wanted to be a good supporting actor in the theater. I
mm.
thought that, after I graduated from college, I'll travel from town to town with I'll do Shakespeare. And of course, at that time, all of those traveling or summer stock kind of theaters were closing down, and or the ones that were around or that are still around, they're doing a lot of musicals and dancing and things like that, and no one wants to see me dance. And my wife thinks I can sing, but I haven't done a lot of musicals. So, but and then I moved to New York in 2001 and did theater and started to get involved, do a little bit of film. I mean, the nice thing about New York is there are a lot of really great film schools there where if you do want to get your feet wet in movies, NYU, School of Visual Arts, New York Film Academy, Hunter College, oh God, so many others. And I worked with all of them. And it was interesting in the beginning. I didn't like working in film. I thought it was, of course, my naivete, not knowing that movies are not just made from actors, like it's the cinematographer and the sound and the lighting and all of these departments. And in the beginning, there was kind of like, like I remember the first time I think I was on a set, like sitting around waiting around for 10 hours and then like slowly getting like a little like, oh my God. And then when you actually get on there, you get to do it. But the sitting around and the waiting. Now, of course, you're used to it and you learn to like, you work with it. But and it took time also coming from a theatrical background where everything is a little bigger and bringing it down to something where it's not really acting. I always say now, well, how did not how this character acts, how does this character behave? What is
Mm,
the behavior of this character? And you try to bring that out with as much subtlety and truth and honesty as possible in all of
mm,
the characters that I played. I mean, you were talking about Doll It Up. See, for me, that movie
mm.
was never a comedy for me. That
Yeah.
movie, it was I remember when I read that script that Yalan sent me, I said, well, either this script can go it can go in a really sophomoric kind of way, or it can be really something to show that something that's kind of a big problem even right now is that we're, we're not talking to each other.
Mm,
We're not communicating with each other. And if this man, this Gunther character, he is with someone, even he thinks this is a real marriage and he thinks that she is a real woman.
mm,
And it was actually very sad that this is a man that cannot communicate with someone who actually who responds to anything. It's
mm,
all made up. And when she's not giving him what he wants to throw her away and
mm,
get someone else, and that was always very sad to me. So but that's an example of like trying to bring as much honesty and truth and your own personal life experience to every part as well. So the journey has been it's been a fun one. And I mean, like when I moved out to Ohio here 5 years ago from New York, in a way, I really had to kind of start over
mm,
because I'm out here in Ohio now. I mean, New York, the context that I had in New York, it's very, very different. And Ohio is a different ball game. But the thing that I found is that it's a very welcoming film community here. A lot of really, really wonderful indie film artists in Dayton, Columbus, and Cincinnati, and like Tom Angeletti, who I've worked with many times. My chief collaborator in Ohio over these last couple of years, he's in Columbus and working with a lot of really, really wonderful people. So it's been nice. You feel new again, and
mm.
you approach the work with a kind of a newfound, I guess childlike zeal. It's kind of like being on in recess all the time. So yeah, that's my I think that's my journey in a nutshell.
Yeah, nice. It's funny, like you're talking about moving into New York and kind of focusing on the theater scene. I was going to ask you about theater because I don't have a lot of actors on it. It tends to be primarily people behind the camera, um, and I know there has always been, I suppose, this theater versus film argument with actors where some actors are like, no, I'm a stage actor, or no. And then it kind of gets divided even further when you do get the film actors like, I'm film but I'm not TV. So it's interesting, like these
Yeah,
lines that draw down. I remember listening to a really fascinating interview with the late great Kevin Conroy, and he was talking about that, and he was like, I don't want to do soaps, and he found out that all the theater actors were doing soaps like in the down season and stuff like that, and that's how they stayed fresh. um so now that you are in Ohio, are you still? Is there a theater scene? Are you still trying to get work on stage as well, or are you now primarily focusing on
yeah.
being? Yeah, okay.
Actually, so why I dyed my hair, I'm actually going away to do a play in Pennsylvania
Oh,
later
nice.
this week, and I'm going to be gone for like 2.5 weeks to work on a play. And then this past fall, I had gone out to California to do a stage version of Stephen King's Misery. So I
Oh,
still
wow.
get the opportunity to go on stage, which I think is important. I think working in the theater, I think that's where you learn how to be an actor.
Mm,
And a lot of like my favorite actors, um, started out in the theater. George C. Scott, Jack Lemmon, Maureen Stapleton, Anne Bancroft, George C. Scott, all of them, Jason Robards, all worked in the theater. And when they went to film, they brought this wealth of experience with them. And then, of course, they would make the money and then go back to the theater as
Mm.
because I think that's what sustained them.
Yep.
You know, being like the fact that you go in front of an audience of 200, 500, or 1,000 people, and every night it's opening night again. And
Mm,
that is exciting. Whereas when you shoot a film, you know, you do a take which you think is good, but they might not use for whatever reason. Or if you, you know, you work on a film and once it's in the can, you really have no control over
mm,
how it's used. And then you kind of forget about it like 6 months to a year later. And then when you see the film, whereas you're an actor going out on stage for 2 or 3 hours, it's all you. And you got to know your lines, you got to hit your marks, you have to be there. And there's no one saying cut. And it's exciting. It really is. And of course, it's that live reaction. If you're doing a comedy, you know, it's exciting. When you do a comedy in a movie, you don't know how okay, because no one's laughing, of course, when you're doing it, but like, you know, you don't know how people are gonna react to it until 6 months or to a year later. Whereas in the theater, you know instantaneously if it's funny or if they don't laugh, I'm like, "Okay, we gotta work on this." So, you know, it's exciting. I like going back. I think it energizes me. Like I'm excited. I can't wait to go back. We're gonna do Larry Shu's The Foreigner, and it's a great comedy. And I get to work with some dear friends, including a very close friend of mine, Lawrence Lesher. We've done I think almost 20 shows together over the last 20 years, and so
wow.
you get when you get to work with your close friends that's just the best.
Fantastic. Um, Now, I saw one short of yours that really kind of jumps out to me. I hope I remember the title correctly. Live Health, is that correct? And that was
Oh, sure. Yeah.
yeah. And was that the first one you directed or co-directed? I saw your name not just as an actor, but you kind of worked behind the scenes as well. Was that one
Yeah.
of the first ones you directed?
Yeah. That was one when during the pandemic, I had this is actually kind of crazy. When we moved here in April of 2020, and in the first week of May, I had a panic attack.
Mm,
And while having the panic attack, I called a hotline, you know, to see if I could speak to someone. And when someone a nice young lady picked up the phone, and I just kind of unloaded on her and
mm,
just started, you know, and was crying and telling her my whole story and everything. And after I told her, there was a pause, and this sweet young lady said, "Please hold. I will get someone for you." I didn't realize that, oh my god,
yeah.
she was the receptionist.
Mm,
And so in that moment, I actually kinda laughed, but in that moment, I kinda thought, "Well, God, what do therapists and doctors who are going through this same thing that we're going through, having the
mm.
same fears and doubts and anxieties, what do they do? How do they cope?" And that, led to you know, live health. And of course I wanted to make something with my wife Jamie, who is formerly a cinematographer and an editor, and it was just something. I got a couple of my friends together, you know, and they pre-recorded their stuff, all completely improvised. I just gave them an idea of, you
Mm,
know, okay, your character, you know, think of something like this. And Nancy Kellogg Gray, Matt Harris, Bob Rutan, Becca Robinson, and Heidi Swarthout, they all were on board and they delivered beautifully. And it's a fun little film, and it was very cathartic and therapeutic to make that and to put that out there.
it was very one thing I really like about all your work is it's very earnest. You know, like you can
Mm,
feel there's a an empathy behind it. There's there's it's grounded in reality. Even I watched Slice the other day, which you're in, and that's maybe not so grounded, but there still is in your performance that kind of it's rooted in some sort of normalcy and
Which one did
humanity.
you watch the other day?
Slice, the
Which one did you
anthology film.
you watched that? Oh my god. Oh, how did did Chet
Yeah,
Turner send that to
Chet
you,
reached
or?
out to me individually. He was like, "Hey,"
Oh
he's
my
like, "We got this
god.
film," so yeah, he sent that one to me. Um, that was a trip because he's like, "Oh, I should let you know there is some violence and nudity in this one." I was like, "It's cool. Like, I watch everything." And
Yeah,
then I was like,
there's,
"Wow, there's a lot in."
yeah. So I originally did, part of the anthology, it was originally called Ready Cash, that I did with
Yeah.
Austin and Dylan Shell, and Chet was the producer. And then I guess about a couple of months later, Chet contacted me and said that they were going to do an anthology with other uh, similarly themed
Mm,
stories about all sorts of things. That was a wild movie to work on. Like, I
yeah.
remember, of course, the scene that where I'm featured in, where like they're getting, like, chipotle, chopped up chicken that I have to feed to this actor, and and he's walking around half naked, and I was like, all right. But, that was a fun part. Like,
Mm.
it was an interesting part, and, but yeah, that's it. Oh, wow, I didn't know you'd seen that.
Yeah, yeah. Chet reached out to me. I don't know if my review's gone up yet because I just scheduled them in advance and I lose track of time. Um,
Sure.
but I do like, yes, even something like that, how grounded it is, and live health really I
Mhm,
connected with so much, being someone who has gone through panic attack. I actually posted something the other day. Like, it's been 1 year since I was hospitalized for my anxiety and kind of
mhm,
stuff like that. And has been to therapy and probably needs a lot more therapy. But I really appreciated how earnest it was, and I find that with all of your work, regardless of the genre, doll it up. You said it was a very sad story for you. I found it funny, but it was still
mhm,
very earnest. And I think
mhm,
because there's nothing funny. I laugh at the worst stuff. Like, Tim, that's the problem with me is I have no, I have no sensitivity. I might just laugh at everything. But you were so earnest in that you played such a straight man that I was able to, like, if I don't laugh at this, I'm going to cry. So I need to, probably
mhm.
have a good old chuckle. Um, what was it like for you with Live Health taking a step behind the camera? Was that a big transition for you? I know you said everyone recorded separately, but still you are kind of orchestrating it all. What was that like, and were there any major challenges for you?
No, I think the biggest challenge, is just, like, communicating what you have in your head
Mm,
to Jamie, to make sure that we get and tell the story as clearly as possible and the way we wanted to tell it, like,
mm,
something that was a slice of life. In everything that I write, or in this case direct, I always want to show just a brief glimpse into these characters' lives,
mm,
because I always want audiences to walk away with, God, I hope Dr. Marcus is okay, or uh, I hope, I hope Michael, in the case of After, I hope Michael doesn't do, go out and exact revenge, or
mm,
in Hard Truths, or in Sundays with Dad. So if an audience member walks away with questions and wondering about the characters and their journey, and you know, I feel like I've done my job, because
mm,
that means they're invested in the characters, and that they see something that they can relate in in the characters. I That's one thing I always try to do also. I always try to drop little hints that, like, maybe these guys are not far from someone or yourself or a family member, and that's the power of movies. The movies, if I mean, there are movies that I watch that, like, it hits you in a certain way, and they come at the right time in your life.
mm,
Like when I saw Sideways in
mm.
2004, I was like, my God, this is Alexander Payne walking around following me with a or Rex Pickett that wrote the book, following me with a tape recorder, like, because this was like kind of like where my life may have been, at that moment in time. And, like, I'll always go back to that, or anything
Mm.
that Alexander Payne does. I mean, he just has that way of, connecting the audience to the material so beautifully.
No, absolutely. The thing I love about all of your shorts. I'm just thinking. I'm just going through the Rolodex in my head, like thinking about all the ones I've watched. Um, and I think the rule is true to all of them. Is that I always you always leave me wanting more. Like whenever you
Mhm.
come out, I'm like, ah man, like this feels like it's part of a much larger story. Like why did you cut it there? Like let's keep going and fight. Like after which is heartbreaking. Like
Yeah.
really sad and like feels like and when I reviewed it, I talked about there's an ending shot and it feels like it could be a cliffhanger. Like it's left quite
Mhm.
ambiguous where it could be like, oh no, it's wrapping up, or oh no, there's more going on, and it feels like it almost takes a potentially quite dark turn. And I'm like, well, now I want to see like Dad. You know, we've seen it. We've seen death, which we've seen all those revenge films, but it did kind of almost feel like
Yeah.
once the credits roll, maybe that's when the real story is starting to kind of unfold and stuff like that. It's really, I think, an earmark of a great short is not overstaying your welcome. Short is very loose. Sometimes a short film is 70 minutes or something like that. So not
Yeah.
overstaying your welcome and leaving the audience wanting more. And I can honestly say, like every film of yours that I've watched, I'm like, man, I just wish like Tim had stayed on for a few more minutes. Like, give me a little bit more. So, yeah, it's been a fantastic and really fun journey to watch all of your work, or not all of it, but as much of it as I have.
Yeah, I mean, I got more stuff I'm sending your way, and I know I think I probably already sent you like not quite the entire catalog, but getting there, I think.
There's a couple. There's one I opened the other day, and then I was really sleepy. I'm like, I can't do the film justice if I'm sleepy. I'll come back to it. I think it's a 20-minute one, and there's one other I haven't opened at all yet in my inbox, so they'll probably get rattled through this week. I reckon. I think
Sure,
on a
sure.
lunch break or something like that. Now you've been acting for a while. You've been mentioning since at least like you kind of seeing the being in the play in eighth grade and stuff like that. Is there a dream role? Is there something like I feel like we all creative types at some point like I want to put my stamp on this character or this story. So is there someone you've wanted to play, or is there a production you've wanted to be a
Oh,
part of that you haven't had a chance to yet, and you would like to
oh
get involved
wow.
in?
Well, all of the roles that I want to do in the theater, I have some time until like I want to crack at Willie Loman and Death of a
Mm,
Salesman
yeah.
one day, but I'm going to be 49 in November, and I think I probably have a couple more years until I can even think about that. But a lot of actors they want to climb the Shakespeare, the Hamlet Mountain, the Lear Mountain. I want to do Edward Albee, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf,
Mm,
or anything Eugene O'Neill, all the depressing ones.
yeah.
Like, my wife always says, "Don't you have, like, a comedy that you wanna do?" Or, like, I mean, there's and in film, you always I think you want something that scares you. If it's a
Mm,
challenge, like when Doll It Up when I first read Doll It Up, I thought I was kinda scared of this because again, it comes back to like, what direction is this movie going to go in? Is it going to be a serious comedy? Um, you know, I mean, the joke always is that's like that comedy is a serious business. Like Jack
mm,
Lemmon never considered The Apartment a comedy. Dustin Hoffman never considered Tootsie a comedy
mm.
because but they bring they you, but that's the thing is you have to play it straight because if I had played Gunther funny winking at the audience the movie wouldn't have worked but the fact
100%.
that
Yeah.
earnest and honest and committed and someone who really does think that he is married that this is a real relationship that's the key too and so roles like that, like you want roles that scare you and challenge you. I mean, nothing specific. I mean, like I always think of things that if I could write, that I could write something that is completely different from the kind of earnest characters that I typically associate. But yes, I think to play like a really nasty bad guy like a
Oh,
truly nasty
yeah.
bad guy. That would be fun because that's really stepping outside the norm, which is I did a movie a couple of years ago that I'm gonna send you very shortly. It's a movie called Psychic Murder, where
Okay.
I played this he's kind of like a ruthless talent agent And when the movie was described to me by the director Brandon Block, he had said it was kind of like David Lynch, which and my ears kind of perked up. So I
Mm,
watched every, I watched Blue Velvet, for inspiration, and Robert Loggia and Lost Highway and all of that. And I couldn't quite get to that level of menace. And it's hard because, it's like, you just have to. It was hard to do. Like I could, when I watch if I go back and I watch the film, I can actually see like a holding back a little bit.
mm.
I would want to do that part again now because he was a truly nasty, nasty character. But and there's always that kind of feeling that like, well, you don't want to go too far, you don't want to go over the top, you don't want to be theatrical, and but no, but playing someone really, really nasty would be fun.
I feel like we do play a villain in Protonopia, um,
Oh yeah.
who is quite that movie is a trip. I don't know if my review I don't know if my review's gonna up with that one, but I compared that one to the work of like Cosmos sorry, Panos Cosmatos, I always get his name wrong, who did Mandy and Beyond the
Mhm.
Black Rainbow, like just visually and audibly, just such a trip. And you do play quite an interesting villain in that one.
Mhm.
So I would like to. I also think you've got a really good. This is me working as your casting agent now. I really think you got a great look for like a noir detective. So I made the comment in one of the first reviews. I'm like, this guy needs to play Jim Gordon. Like, put him in a Batman movie and make him Commissioner Gordon. Like, you got the look.
It's funny that you mentioned that. About 3 years ago, I worked on a Batman fan series where
Mm.
I played Commissioner Gordon. I don't
Ah,
know what
cool.
the status of the project is, but I had a ball working on it because
Yeah.
you go out there and we had a great Batman and Kevin Porter and yeah, no, but I don't know what the status of the project is as of yet. But it was 3 years ago that I went out to. We shot it just a little outside of Chicago, but
Oh,
I had
very
a
cool.
ball doing that. Yeah, yeah,
I got to
yeah.
look
But yeah,
out
I
for that
love
one.
film noir.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope it comes together because it was certainly a lot of fun to
Mm,
make. But yeah, I love film noir, like all of those old like Richard Widmark or Alan Ladd kinds of Night in the City. I mean, they're so wonderfully done, and like
mm.
I mean, like that style. You see a couple of movies that come out with homage to those kinds of classics every once in a while, but you can't beat those classics.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Um, Now, one question I always like to ask when I talk to new people is about I refer to it as the gift of film. I feel like when someone recommends you a movie, if they're truly making a personalized recommendation, it's such a gift. It's just like, hey, I know you. You need to check this out. If you watch it and dig it, I think it's going to change your life. And I was very lucky. I've had that happen a
Mhm.
few times in my life. Is there a movie that someone gave you where you're like, oh my God, like this is put, you mentioned Sideways before. Is there a movie that someone kind of gave you where you're like, oh my God, like thank you, because now I know exactly who I want to be and what my path is. Do you have anything like that? It's a big question. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, Days of Wine and Roses, when I was in high school, like that was recommended to me by a friend. But when I was in college, I went into this house I was living in and I was playing, and they were playing The Big Lebowski. And I
mm,
had seen the film before and I thought it was okay, but I when they were playing it, I was kind of like, oh, I've seen this. And I got and a friend of mine, like he said, no, 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 sit and watch.
mm,
And I watched it again, and it hit me
mm.
differently. And like just that little tap of my arm, and he said, no, no, like watch this. You need to watch this. Like, and now it's one of my favorite movies. So it's
Mm.
like, and I just watched it again a couple of weeks ago. I was in Columbus working on a new movie with Tom Angeletti, and on the first night, after it was after our first day, Big Lebowski was on, and I said I got to watch it because you get that little bit of that dude magic, sprinkled on you.
Well, that's my new favorite phrase, dude magic. That's great.
Dude magic.
Uh, you have that in common with friend of the show Andrew from the Revisionist Almanac, who I believe you've been chatting with as well. His
Yeah, absolutely.
one of his favorites is The Big Lebowski. I just rewatched it after his recommendation. Like, I really need to check that out again. And it is, I mean, look, it's the Coen brothers, so it's always going to be a magic trick of a movie. But gee, like when those two work together, that balance between humor and darkness is so that line is so fine. You can cut it with a razor's edge. I think it's pretty insane.
And the thing about it is that there's nothing like you look at all of their movies.
Mm,
No one writes movies the way they do, and no one makes movies like the fact that Fargo with this mystery, they have moments of hilarity,
mm,
you know, between Steve Buscemi and Peter Stormare, like, and you just know that okay, Peter's going to kill him very, very quickly, and or like Barton Fink
mm,
or Lewin Davis. I mean, or you know, Miller's Crossing, one of my favorite Coen Brothers films. You know, like that's like you know the kinds of because they I think they still have that indie film spirit within them.
mm,
I mean, like, you know, going all the way back to Blood Simple and Raising Arizona and all of their
mm,
whenever I see one of their films, like it kind of reignites something. Like, you know, like, yeah, God, I want to like these are the kinds of stories that I want to tell. And Big Lebowski, I think, is one of their best.
yeah. Yeah, it's a great one. That's awesome. Yeah, I love finding out which movie kind of connected with people. Like, what's the one that kind of made you, like you mentioned Superman 2, obviously, when you were about 3 years old, and that
Yeah.
would have been magical. But it's interesting the stuff that holds up and the way it connects with us, again and again. Like for me, it was Blues Brothers. I was far too young when my dad showed me that movie, and then I was the only kid at school, listening to those tunes while everyone else listened to the radio. But then, when I was in high school, I found my people. I'm like, oh, other people have heard of this movie. Thank goodness. So, yeah.
That's the power of movies. I mean,
Mm,
movies like can bring people together, whether it's, you know, from like I think of the Big Lebowski now, and like I remember specific moments from college, specific people, and we would just sit there and, you know, drink Iron City beer out
mm,
of Pittsburgh and, you know, just order Papa John's pizza and just sit there and, you know, you hear that Sam Elliott narration and you
mm,
know and the Bob Dylan and the wonderful soundtrack and it's just you know like that not only the viewing experience of the actual movie but the memories
mm.
of the people like that's why I think that movie is always going to be have a close place in my heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, so, Tim, you've obviously achieved so much. Like you got this incredible career doing all these wonderful films, like long form storytelling and short form. What's next? Do you want to mount and direct your own theatrical production? Do you want to step behind the camera for a feature? Is there a director you want to work with? Like, what is pie in the sky? What's next for Timothy J. Cox?
You know, here, I mean, we just wrapped on a film a couple of weeks ago, another short called Good Luck to Me
Hmm.
that I co wrote with a wonderful actress and writer named Heather Bales and Tom Angeletti and Awesome Films, the same team that I've worked with. They were on hand for that. Maya Ahmed, who had directed Hard Truths, directed this one. And I like, you know, the short film. I think, you
Mm,
know, but of course, you know, I never say no to anything. I mean, I
mm,
just, you know, I just enjoy the journey. But
mm,
Good Luck to Me was such a great experience. It's about a couple, married couple who've been together for 20 years, and they reach this point in their relationship where the relationship is going to go one way or it's going to go the other. And it's something that I think anyone who's ever, whether you're in a relationship or you've ever had to make like a really, really tough choice, or if that choice has already been made for you, how you deal with it, how, you know, and how you decide what your next step in the universe is going to be. And Heather was such a great writing partner and a scene partner and wonderful crew and then after you know and then in July I'm working on another film of a script I wrote called Dan's Birthday, working with a wonderful local actress named Ashley Lawhorn. Tom Angeletti is directing that. And we play I play a father, and she plays the girlfriend of my son, Dan, who had been killed in a car accident 10 years before. And we're meeting on a park bench on his birthday to celebrate him and kind of check in with each other and see how we're both coping and still grieving. And it's again, it's I'm always fascinated with how we cope, how people
Mm,
cope, with whether it's with tragedy or something comic, or and you just see a little glimpse of who these people are. And
yeah.
hopefully in 8 to 10 or 15 minutes, you care enough that you're invested, that you do ask those questions like, God, I wonder about Ben, in Sundays with Dad. I have people who come up all the time that like and have that shared experience of like, that's my father, that's my mother,
Mm,
that's, I've been Jason. And like, that's, that's why we do this.
mm,
If that work, it, I've always, as far as my approach to like this work, like, and whenever anyone asks me, tells me that they want to be an actor, I said, well, do you want to be an actor or do you want to be a movie star? Do you want to be a celebrity? Because
mm,
you want to be a movie star and a celebrity, you know, that's, I don't know if that's necessarily a realistic goal to like
yeah.
set for yourself. But if you want to be an actor, get ready for a life of ebb and flow, and
Mm.
but along the way, and I wish I started writing stuff 10, 15 years ago, because
Mm,
now it feels like I'm entering into a different, like a really fun and exciting act in my own journey, where I kind of, you're the captain of your own ship,
mm,
which and it's nice, it's exciting, and telling the kinds of stories that I want to tell, and the kinds of movies that I want to sit down, and have an experience where, yeah, I can relate to that guy, or even if you don't relate to that person, you can kind of respect where they're coming from. And so
mm,
that's I just keep enjoying the journey and like and having fun. I
yeah.
mean, I thankfully have a wonderful wife who's very supportive of it. Even when I dye my hair. When I dyed my hair first, a couple of days ago, I looked like a wax figure of Burt Reynolds from like 1977. And but I do stuff like this all of the time, and she's still with me. So, and of course we have our son Spencer, named after Spencer Tracy, my one of my acting idols. So, he has that little bit of that actorly inspiration in his name. So, yeah, I feel like I feel like I'm just getting warmed up.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I was going to comment on the hair dye because I noticed the change. And for anyone who doesn't believe in the magic of makeup and prosthetics stuff like that, you look like a completely different person. I was like, that's like so
I
different
one of
to.
the when I'm not acting, I am a uh, all day substitute teacher at an elementary school here, and of course, this was the last week of school, and I went in, and all of the kids were looking at me like, Why do you look different?" Or and the teachers, on the other hand, they just say, "Oh, Tim's doing another role," or someone did ask if I was in witness protection, jokingly, but
So you teach as well. That's fascinating. I was going to ask you whether
yeah.
whether you did this full time or whether you did this and worked at the same time. My wife is also does the same thing. She's a teacher and she acts when she can as well. So
Oh
um,
yeah, no, like yeah, I've been doing the substitute, and I go in and I help the school out. I mean, when I'm not subbing, covering a class, I help out. I pitch in. I always like to think I'm kind of like the designated hitter at the school. I come in and I do a little bit of everything, and it's nice. I get to walk to work, I get my steps in, and the people are very, very nice, and they're very supportive of my endeavors here, and so it's nice to have that, and it's flexible, and because again, actor's life, it's ebb and flow, and
Mm.
so you always want to have a steady flow of money coming in.
Yes, yes. As a parent with a mortgage, I understand completely. You know,
Mm.
um, I'm really glad you just made that distinguishment. Distinguishment that doesn't feel right. You distinguished the difference between actor and movie star. It's really fascinating because yeah, when you speak to a lot, I speak to a lot of people as well, and they want to be on screen, but then it might not necessarily be they want to be the performer. But I find that my favorite actors are the character actors, the ones who you don't necessarily see on the poster all the time. Like he got a big shout out a couple of years ago in the Batman, but for the longest time, one of my favorite actors was Paul Dano. Just would
Yeah.
always blend in the background. I'm like, this guy is not getting his flowers. And so seeing character actors and people kind of don't get me wrong, I like Mission Impossible and Tom Cruise and stuff like that. But I'm always, it's not the person front and center I'm most interested in. Like, who's the guy off to the left there? Who's the one making that choice? That's the one that I'm always kind of interested in because that's the one they're the ones who are thinking and actively doing things to, kind of pop and make differences to the scene. So,
Yeah, the character actors, like, growing up, like, that's who I always gravitated towards.
mm,
Like, I remember I think every movie I watched in the 1980s, it was guaranteed it was gonna have either Charles Durning in it,
mm,
John Lithgow, John Mahoney, or Bob Balaban, and
mm,
like they were everywhere, and like they would always, and they would pop up as like, a military figure or a political figure or a scientist or whatever. And I thought, well, God, that's a really good, they're just working all the time.
mm,
I always say if I could go back in time and be a part of John Ford or Frank Capra's stock company of character actors like
mm,
Ward Bond or Jane Darwell or Beulah Bondi or Walter Brennan, like if you go on IMDb and you look at all of them have like 250 to 300 film credits in
mm,
television and theater because they were Kurt Russell has had a great line about what his father, Bing Russell, who was also an actor, did. They were known as plumber actors. They would
mm,
show up in the studio system, and one day they would be a doctor, one day would be the sheriff, one day would be the convict, one day would be the whatever, and they would work all the time and
mm,
playing a variety of different types of parts. And in most cases, none of them ever became, movie stars or household names, which was fine, but they worked. And
mm,
that's always been the goal, and I think that should be the goal of any actor.
yeah,
You should be thankful for the opportunity to be able to work
mm,
because in Ohio and in New York and Los Angeles and Chicago and all over the world, there are a lot of actors, and the sad fact is a lot of actors don't work for
mm,
whatever reason. A lot of it is luck, but a lot of it
hmm,
also is, speaking from my own personal experience, you have to make the opportunities happen,
yeah,
and writing parts like if they were casting if someone else had written after and they were casting, I probably would never be considered for that, or
mm,
the role of Peter in Hard Truths, or even Jason. But when you write it, you get to have um, you get to have a say, which is
yeah,
nice. And it's not that I want to write great parts for myself. My thing is, if you look at after Beth Metcalf has the part that everybody would want because it's the more active role
mm,
because she has to be the one that has to convince Michael, look, don't go out and do this. You need to. And so and for George in Sundays with Dad, I wrote that part for him.
yeah,
I wrote it for him. I mean, there was no one else that I had seen him in a film here. And I thought, God, if I ever write a movie where I want to have someone play my father. I want him to play my father. And just, he just had that twinkle in his eye that I thought, well, he just makes it easy to write for.
and he's wonderful in that. I think in my review I said like you'd never want to kind of compare actors, but he has this scene stealing monologue that like brought tears to my eyes. It's just wonderful, like And that's no disrespect to your performance. You're obviously wonderful in it as well, but you can tell, even if you're paying attention, you can tell like one role was definitely given the meatier piece on purpose. Like you can tell it was very much a vehicle. Like, yes, we're telling this wonderful story, but let's give this man an opportunity to shine and show what he can do. It makes me think of oh my goodness, Michael Parks. When he finally got, Michael Parks, wonderful character actor, like again another
Mm,
late great of ours. Was in the background of
yeah,
every film, and then in the '90s, Quentin Tarantino was like, I'm going to throw you in a film, and then in the 2010s, like Kevin Smith's like, I'm going to give you the lead role, and suddenly you can see what these guys can do. You see it with people like Sid Haig and Bill Moseley, like, oh my goodness, like once you give
yeah.
these actors a chance to give them something to chew on, and play with. You can really see, and yeah, his performance in that is wonderful in Sundays with Dad, like just beautiful.
I think every actor, they have it within them
Mm,
to bring out something extraordinary. When Bruce Dern did Nebraska a couple of years
mm,
ago, different than anything else he had ever done in his entire career. Will Forte in that movie too, not a
mm.
comic role, and that showed. And that's like everyone has it within them. When Bill Murray did Lost in Translation, or
Yes, yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, I mean, everyone, they have it within them. It's getting that. It's the right director, the right script, the right time.
Mm,
Um, I mean, uh, when Bill Murray did Lost in Translation, I wasn't surprised because I felt he had been building up to that because I thought Groundhog Day had a little bit of that, and then of
mm,
course, a little bit of the stuff. So it was just a perfect, it was just the perfect progression. But Michael Parks, I always liked Michael Parks. He did a movie. It's probably not a movie that anyone would ever remember him for, but he did a movie with Robert Mitchum and Richard Burton called Battleground,
okay.
and it was a movie done in the late '70s, and it was and Michael Parks, but Michael Parks is good in the film.
Mm,
And I always thought, like, like he's stand out, like, he's on screen a lot with Robert Mitchum, and like but, like, I you remember him, and I was remember and I, of course, I remember him too. I think he was in Death Wish 4. I think he was the bad guy in Death Wish 4, but that's the thing is you remember, like, when Robert Forster did Jackie Brown, I had,
mm,
I said, "Finally." That's
yeah.
it. Or when Paul Giamatti got American Splendor and then Sideways and then everything else, I said, "Good." Or, I mean, you love it when actors who've been knocking around for a while, like Ann Dowd on, The Handmaid's Tale.
Mm,
Like, when she won her Emmy, I was like, I cheer. One of the things I do when we watch TV shows, and I think one of my favorite things is when the guest stars list come up, and if I
mm,
see a name of an actor, of a character actor that I haven't seen in a while, like,
mm,
I said, "Oh, so and so," and my wife would be like, "Who?" And I said, "Look this guy up," like Dabney Coleman, one of, the late great who passed away, I think, this past year. He popped up on an episode of, Yellowstone, and I think he played Kevin Costner's father, and he just had a brief little thing, and I said, "Dabney Coleman, yes,"
yeah.
like I cheer like I'm at a sporting event, like, so, like, yeah, you love the character actors, and,
Yeah.
like, now, I mean, Bob Odenkirk, he's making character actors into action stars with,
Yeah.
the, yeah, so it's like the bus scene, I'm like, "That's for all the character actors," him beating up 4 or 5 guys by himself. I mean, he got a lick too, but as character actors do, but, it's nice that, the character actors are, embraced again.
Yeah. It's yeah, they're just again, you don't want to pit different types of performers against each other, but that's what interests me the most. And again, like I like Tom Cruise, I like Robert Downey Jr. I think they're all fantastic, and I will pay to see them every time they're in something. What's that guy or girl to the left doing? Like, what interesting decision are they making? And that always fascinates me. So,
Yeah.
it's lovely to hear your passion for the craft and for the people involved in the craft. Um, we're gonna get out of here in a second, but I did have another question because you've talked about, is it Awesome? Is that how it's pronounced? The production company you've been working with?
Awesome, yeah.
So you've
Yeah,
been working with them.
Alysm, yeah.
Yeah, I always struggle with that pronunciation, so I'm glad we've got it on record now. Um, Given your history with them, and you've been in a number of productions with them, and you've been working for quite a while, do you find yourself having to audition as much? Or are you now pretty much a key player with like, up, let's call Tim in, we can just get him in, or do you still have to go through that rigorous audition process?
Oh, yeah, I still audition. I mean, like, well, the thing I like to do is, like, I just did it the other day. Like, if there's a director's work that I really like,
Mm,
I'll reach out to them and say, "Hey, I really like your work. I think we should work together. Here's
mm,
my stuff." And there are times that, like, they'll write back and say, "Hey, I've really liked your work. I've wanted to work with you, but I haven't found the right script."
mm,
And like that'll give you an idea of the kind of community Ohio is here. Like everyone, we just want to do good work. We just want to,
mm,
do the best work that we can, and we want to work together. And it's so nice, like, to have that everyone is genuinely, supportive of one another, but,
mm,
yeah, I like auditioning, I think now in the age of the self-tape,
mm.
it's nice. I'm not nailing my auditions, like, in one take like you are, James, with your 90-second takes, but sometimes I am, but, like, I'm always wary of, like, one take. I'm like and I go back and I watch, I'm like, "Okay, that was good, but let me do another one for safety," because,
Mm,
I mean, when you're on set, like, you always wanna get it in a couple of takes, but, like, the self-tapes are nice because you can be relaxed about it, you can like, I could do it in here and put, like, a little drape behind me here, and, you could do it as many times as you like, and
mm,
it's very and you can play too. And
mm,
my feeling is also Michael Keaton has a great line about auditioning. He said, "Don't look at it as going in to get a job. If in that day, if that 90 seconds or 2 minutes, if that's all the acting that you're gonna do today, you're going to work. You're going to work for
mm,
90 seconds or 2 minutes. So go in like you already have the part
mm,
and that you're going to work. And whatever happens beyond that, you have absolutely no control over. And have fun with it, enjoy yourself. And if they like what you do, fine. If they don't, that's fine too. I always think the next job is always around the corner.
mm. I like that Michael Keaton line quite a bit. There's a similar one.
Yeah.
Tara Strong, who is primarily known for her voice work, but she's been in on screen and stuff as well. She has this very similar story where she goes, "Whenever I go into audition, I'm just like, it's mine," and it's not a rude way, it's not a mean thing. She's like, "It's mine. I'm going in. It's mine." Like, and if I think that way, the power of positive thinking, like. I tend to book more than I don't, so I'm just going to keep doing what I do. I'm like, that's great. Like, what a great way to do it.
And that's like the mindset because if you go in thinking, I got to get a job, I got to get a job, I got to get a
Mm,
job, that's what you're going to be thinking of. And you're not going to be open and free and available. And, you have to, there's a wonderful line that my teacher, Stanley Harrison, said, when you go into an audition or you go onto a set, you have to leave your personal baggage at the door.
mm,
Because if you bring that in with you, it affects the work. And I think if you go in with that mentality that I'm going to work, or
mm.
I kind of like that. It's mine.
Yeah.
It's there's a playful and wonderful things can happen from that. And you could do things that you didn't think you didn't know were possible. I always love if you go into an audition or you're on a film set, you go and you do something like the hell was that? I was like, I didn't, wow, where did that come from? It's like those moments when you can still surprise yourself.
Mm,
There's like the whimsy. That was the word I was looking for earlier, like
mm,
a kind of a childlike whimsy about the work and the approach and just to remember to play.
mm. Absolutely. Well, that's why I like going into conversations like these, but even job interviews. The ones that I have the most fun with, the ones where I feel like I've done my best, is when I leave all the prep notes to the side, and that's why I eventually just ditched the paperwork. I'm like, if I've got a sheet of paper here, I spend my whole time focused on making sure I cover all these points. I'm not engaged in the conversation, you know. So I just like
Mhm.
to go in, like, if I can go in, like, you're either going to dig me or you won't. But at least if I'm giving you my full attention, you're going to get the best representation of me. And if you don't dig me, that's fine. But at least, you know, you had the best version of me. And like, if you really don't like it, then hey, I gave it my best. We'll move on to the next one, that sort of thing. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
Jeff Daniels has a great line too. He said, "One of the things that's hard for actors to figure out at first, you have to learn that not everyone is gonna buy what you sell."
Mm,
You know? I mean, because I think every actor, and I've sat on the other side of that table, every actor who comes in is a good actor.
mm,
But it's like I don't even look at it as a rejection if you don't get cast. It's like you're good, but we're just looking for this. Casting is such a specific thing. There was something I auditioned for about 3 years ago, and the director was someone that I knew and was a friend, and I went in and read well, and he said, "You read great, but you're just not quite physically what we're looking for." And I said, "Okay, I
mm,
like that. I like when you're like, if you're like, I hope you find what you're looking for. When you're looking for someone specific, when a casting goes out and they cast a wide net and they'll just say, we're looking for males 30 to 50. And I said, well, you're going to get 500 submissions. But
mm,
if you put something specific like, this is someone that specific physical traits and stuff like that, that helps the actor not only in the auditioning, but that helps the actor. And like, you know what, like maybe that's not maybe I'm not a right fit for that,
mm,
and so all sorts of things like that are all helpful
mm,
to an actor because what we all want at the end of the day is, again, everybody, we just want to do good work. We want to support each other. I mean, I know, like, with all of the 800 awards shows that they have out there, they have this thing where they want to pit us all against one another. I mean,
mm.
you know, I don't know, but I think, the work. Everybody, we just do the work and be thankful that we get to do it.
Yeah. But that's a really interesting note you talk about, like making the casting net more specific. That makes me think of The Simpsons when Bart auditions and he's 3 inches too short, and they're like, "Oh, you
Yeah.
would have got the role if you're 3 inches taller." But my favorite casting rejection story is from Michael Angarano, who was a Disney kid. He was in a bunch of Disney movies, and he's kind of gone on and worked with I think it was Steven Soderbergh and some other directors. And he tells the story about how he got rejected from a film, and the only feedback he got from the casting table was he just wasn't dangerous enough. And it was like, how do you work with that? Like,
What are you supposed to, it's like, you want to go out and hold up a liquor store,
yeah,
like,
he should come in with some tattoos, not
yeah.
with a jacket. Like,
This was I remember years ago when we were doing in-person auditions, I went into an audition, it was for a drama,
mm,
and it was for a husband and wife drama. And they set me up with a woman who was about 5'11". Now
mm,
I'm 5'6". Now I go in the room and I said, okay, well, I'm not going to get this. And so, like, you just have fun.
mm,
And but it ended up being comical
mm,
because, it was kind of like we were doing the Dudley Moore story,
mm,
like well, it's like things like that, like the specific kinds of things. And it does come down a lot sometimes to physicality. I mean, I play
mhm,
a lot of dads, and when the casting and they're trying to find a believable looking family, um, you get passed over if, like, well, if you're not, not quite, it's not quite believable if you be the parent of these kids, or so. It's like
mm,
it's all very, very specific, which is good.
mm. Awesome. Timothy, you've been a wonderful guest. It's been lovely to get to know you and have a chat and talk about your career and the things you've been doing. Before we get out of here, do you want to tell people where they can find you, where they can find some of your work? I've been putting links up to all the videos you give me, the ones that aren't embargoed, of course. But do you want to let people know, yeah, where they can find you?
Absolutely. Yes, I'm on Instagram at Timothy J Cox. I'm also on Facebook. Let's see. I am one of the few people that is using Blue Sky now. It's kind of like the new Twitter. I think it's still trying to find its audience, but and I'm on TikTok as well under Timothy J Cox. So I keep it really easy. But yeah, that's usually the best way to find me. And of course, IMDb is kind of like my website. I have demo reels and try to update that all of the time with new stuff.
Nice. Excellent. Well, thank you again, Timothy. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you to everyone for listening. Hopefully, you've enjoyed my chat with Tim. He's welcome back anytime. Maybe next time we can talk about some of his favorite movies, but I really want to just talk about his career. Go and support him. Go and check out the links I've been posting on Instagram. They're really fun. And if you don't have an attention span, they're quite short, most of them. So you can definitely sit down and knock a few out and have a great time. We'll be back next week with a team show. And then I think we do have another director lined up. I got to check my schedule. We've got a few more coming. But as we say every week on this show, guys, I was a teenage film snob, but I'm trying to be better. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, James.